Hey there, Capricorn. How's it going? Let's do a financial reading for the month of February since we are like 48 hours before we get into that month. And I wanted to look at things from the perspective of those of you who are dealing with career, education, a job search, finances that have to do with bills, contractual negotiations, houses, travel, finances in general. I'm gonna break this reading into the different areas because I know that there are a lot of different financial situations that you might be dealing with. But bearing in mind when I do this, that I do have to disclose that in a financial reading like this, that I and these services or these videos do not replace or supplement at all any financial or legal advice of any kind or professional advice of any kind. This is strictly for entertainment purposes only. But do we like to look into a financial reading? Absolutely. I love looking at the cards in these. This is one of my favorite kind of readings, to be honest. And interesting it is. We've got the Two of Swords in the reversal. Actually, all cards are in the reversal in your reading. That doesn't mean it's necessarily negative. We'll get to it piece by piece, but I'm just noticing the cards as they're laid out. The Emperor is also in the reversal. The Judgment is in the reversal. The Page of Wands is in the reversal. And the Knight of Pentacles is in the reversal. These cards, there is an understanding that in tarot, if a card is in the upright, a lot of people look at it favorably. And in a modern sense, when a tarot card is in the reversal, a lot of people say, oh, that must mean it's the opposite. So it's not a favorable energy. And that's not typically the case. There are a lot of cards in the reversal that actually have a really good meaning. And there are some cards in tarot historically that don't even have a different meaning if they're in the reversal. With that being said, every card that you just pulled is one of those kind of cards that's a little bit harder when they're in the reversal out of the 5 cards that you have. Let me explain. And I'm trying to think about where I want to start with this because this is going to be a little bit tough. I mean, a hard pill to swallow, essentially. I think the first thing that I want to do is I want to start off with the Emperor in the reversal position. The Emperor card is historically one of the strongest cards when it comes to building up something like you would in finances, building up your empire, you could say. And Capricorns are all about empire building. You guys definitely have a knack for being in that position of building your finances up. But in the reversal position, this particular Emperor has a problem with being over controlling and doing too much too fast, and stretching their energy because of their wantingness to absolutely gain something. But they're doing so to some degree in a less than integrity-based fashion. Because they can get very grumpy with the reversal Emperor. They can get very angry. This can be a situation and an energy in the month of February where you have tried different avenues, and the fact that something's not panning out the way that you want, it's leading you to be frustrated. But again, quite frankly, it's almost like leading you to be angry. For some of you, if you have attempted a certain job and it's not panning out the same way that you wanted it to or that you had hoped for, that could be one avenue that's leading to this kind of frustration or crankiness or ungroundedness, instability. Reminding us, or I'll remind you here, that the Emperor card, he owns an empire, yes. But in traditional tarot, you can see the mountains here. On the traditional tarot that this Gustave Doré deck is based off of, which is the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, all of the land behind the Emperor is rocky and barren. So his empire doesn't actually grow anything. He puts all of this effort in. He puts a lot of work. It's kind of like having a job that is going to get educated. You're going and doing university, or you're doing a career, or you're doing a home business. And you keep trying and you keep trying and you keep trying, but in the end you feel burnt out. And something is not flourishing. That's the dynamic of what happens when you build up an empire, but the empire around you is actually barren, and it's not feasible to continue on that particular path. It's actually the Empress card in the upright position, which is the consort, you could say, or the partner of the Emperor. She's the one with all of the beautiful garden growing around her. All of her fruits of her labor are not showing up in a negative light. But with the Emperor card, whether it's in the upright or the reversal, The Emperor card does have something they've been working for that is not suitable to maintain. It requires a new path to be taken. And interestingly enough, the Two of Swords is here, which is, it mimics the energy, you could say, of the Two of Wands, where it's decision making time. But the thing about the Two of Swords is you really, really care about it, and you're really like putting yourself in a protective or defensive position about letting go of something. Like a person who has tried for a really long time to get, maybe you're in university in this course, you've already done 3 years of the course, and you're looking at it now and you're like, Jesus, I don't think I want this apprenticeship, or I don't think the internship's going to work out. Or you finish your schooling and for some reason you can't get hired. Like, it's like doing all of this work and you're like, what the heck? Or even for those of you dealing with employment, it's like handing out all of these resumes and you're like, what the hell? I've been doing all this work. Why isn't it working? This is the dynamic of the energy. It's like having a craft, like being a musician or being a painter, but you can't get your music sold, or you can't, get something lifted off in your art. It's not that you're not supposed to be doing these things, but it does have you in the month of February in that dynamic of recognizing if something's not going forward, then something needs to be done about it, right? If a bill keeps lingering over your head, or, you're trying to do the sale of the house and it's just not closing, then something needs to be done about it. That's the feeling here. Does it mean it's always going to be that way? No, but how much can you tolerate? There's only so much time a person's going to be able to handle if something doesn't keep flourishing, is essentially the energy here. Now, the Two of Swords with this protective energy, historically, this card has a picture of a person sitting with a blindfold on, and they've got two swords across their chest. They are protecting themselves from the things they cannot see. And in this case, it makes me think that what you cannot see is the path forward and how to get out of this situation. But the issue is that with the Judgment card in the reversal, the Judgment card is a calling to a better path. So there's a part of me that thinks that you actually have the opportunity to do something better than what you're doing right now, but you might not want to let go of what you're doing right now because you've put so much hard work into it. Some examples of this would be handing out a bunch of resumes as a receptionist, but then turns out the actual path that you're supposed to be doing is an accountant. And you're just like, no, I'm not giving up my music to be an accountant, or I'm not giving up receptionist to be an accountant. There's this dynamic of a calling, but in the reversal position, the Judgment card historically has to do with resistance to another path, resistance to the calling, to a better outcome. And with the blindfold on to the Two of Swords, it's probably because this new path, you cannot see it as being better. That also includes, you guys, sometimes putting something down for a little bit of time and testing something out, or going on a different path to then later on come back to what you were originally doing. Like when you have to put down a certain path, it doesn't mean you have to put it down forever. It doesn't mean just because you put something down one time that it wasn't meant for you. There are plenty of people, myself included even, who have started off, look at an author. I've only ever authored coloring books, so I'm not talking about me, but look at, say, a fiction novel writer, an actual, true, full-blooded author. How many times in an author's history did they have to put down a book that they were writing for 5 years, and then they didn't get to release that book for 9 years down the road? They look back and they're like, oh, I just sat on this book and never did anything with it for 9 years. And then all of a sudden they released the book 9 years later, and it turned out to be their smash hit success. So even if you do have to put something down temporarily and make that kind of a decision in the month of February, it doesn't mean you have to put it down forever. Usually what happens is while you're on a different path, you're picking up some kind of a skill set that the universe wants to use for you later on. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because, again, the Judgment card is a card of going and being called to a path that you're not necessarily used to. The Two of Swords is a calling towards making a decision. So you have both of these cards showing up about a different calling, and dead center in the middle of the reading here is somebody who does not want to let go. If that's the energy of not wanting to let go, then this is a reading telling you that you should let go, that there is something trying to switch you into a different avenue. Now, the other two cards that I haven't spoken of, these are really telling. Knight of Pentacles in the reversal, not a good card to have again. Knight of Pentacles in the upright, beautiful energy. It means long-term success. To have a reading here that's saying the success isn't necessarily grounded at this point in time is really unfortunate. We want that Knight of Pentacles in the upright position. There is a way to go forward getting the Knight of Pentacles in the upright position, but it requires planting your life in a different field. The Knight of Pentacles traditionally is a card of a gentleman who is plowing a field. You know, when you make a harvest, when you grow grapevines, or you have a tomato plant field, or you have cucumbers growing in a garden. How do you get those harvests to grow? You have to pick the right land. You have to pick the right fertilizer. You make sure the ground is tilled properly. You put the seeds in the right location. Then you water the seeds. Like I'm using the analogy of the metaphor of how to grow a garden. Well, if you build something foundationally poor, like right from the get-go, you didn't choose the right land or the right pathway, that means all of a sudden you have to redo the process and you have to go build it on a different pathway. Nobody wants to do that. They just want to, get it done, one and done, and their garden is growing. But if it doesn't come to fruition, then that's what we end up having to do. We go on a different path for a different lot, a different field to plant in. So that technically brings us to the third avenue here. That's telling you that you're going to need to switch something up. If you've been in this position where you have, like over the last little bit, said to yourself, should I stay or should I go? This is one of those times where this reading is saying, change it up. If you're being called to it and you've been hesitant and nervous about changing something up, that includes going to a new house, moving to a new city. If that's what's been on your mind, if you're like, I don't think I want to stay at this job anymore. This is what this reading here is telling you. Yeah, changing it up is going to be a good idea. Moving to a new lot is going to be a good idea. If you've been interested in a certain house or location, right? This is about changing things up here. But being very honest with yourself when you do this, because the Page of Wands is a card historically that's called the card of the swindler. It's when someone either manipulates you and lies to you, or it's when you lie to yourself and you swindle your own self out of a good thing. Like the kind of energy that you get when you stay in your own situation for too long, you end up swindling yourself out of success because you keep holding on to something. This is a lesson learning energy, if I do say so myself. Now, something that I do want to mention about the Judgment card is that no matter how long you hold on to old habits and old goals, eventually the Judgment card pulls you out of it and you're not able to hold on. It's a card of like, it is when someone can't let go of something but must and will. So things will switch up to you, but it depends on, or switch up for you, but it depends on how long you grip on, right? The universe is going to tug at you and remind you, do you want to stay in the same spot? Do you want it like the Emperor here? Do you want to stay with the barren fields around you in the empire that you're building? Or do you want to try something that's more productive for you? But again, with the blindfold on with the Two of Swords, you're probably not going to see it at first. But the longer, pardon my French, the longer that you hold on to it, the longer that you stay in the situation that you are now. Trying new avenues is going to be the key. So a lot of this looks like, again, I've mentioned like going to new jobs, going to new houses, new locations. I've mentioned, going through to new courses if you're doing a PhD or something like that. But I do want to mention this kind of energy for those of you who are dealing with legal situations, contractual situations, negotiations, settlements, mediation, any of those kind of things. This dynamic might be the kind of circumstance where you take a loss and it opens up a pathway to a better situation. I'll give you an example. From personal experience, one of the most difficult things that I ever had to do in a litigation circumstance was to offer a settlement that got completely turned down in a legal proceeding. I had to go an alternative route. as it so turned out, going the alternative route for a whole 6 months of having to have a negotiation go sour, it actually allowed for more time to unfold in the dynamic between the people negotiating, so that 6 months down the road, the people actually reaccepted my previous 6-month-old offer. So you see, it's not just about giving something up. And I mentioned that earlier. It's not about giving something up fully. It's about picking and choosing your battles. There are some battles that at a certain point in time, it is more acceptable to not go those routes and change things up even temporarily, just to allow for another path to present itself. And then, if it's suitable, to pick that path back up later if you need to. Some people, they take the loss and it is the loss, and it opens up to a completely new direction down the road. That's usually what happens when one door closes, another door opens. But for others of you, if you close off an opportunity right now, you'll end up picking that thing up later on anyways. So not allowing yourself with your decisions of finances to think that it's the end game just because you had to say no to something, or if you had to take the shit end of the stick on something. Like, try if you can to reframe your position to knowing that it's not permanent. If you do have to take a loss on something in the present moment, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a permanent loss. It can be something that you can revisit at a later date if you so choose to. I also think that with the Emperor card and the Judgment card, when both of those situations are about a need to let go, you know what happens once they do let go? They actually do get a better outcome, because the Emperor then joins up with the Empress card and she gets supreme abundance. So it is to say that if you do choose to go on a new path, if that calling has been calling you, it's likely for a reason. And the reason is because there is a path that's actually better than the one that you've been burning yourself out on. But in order to get to a new path, you have to be open-minded enough to peek out the window of life, kind of thing. So it looks like for the month of February here, the main energy is going to be reinventing yourself to that new path and having the courage to let go of old things that may not be working or may not be serving you. Now, what I'm going to do from this is I'm going to go over to TikTok and I am going to do a financial reading for you, where I look at every single month for every single week in the month of February, because this is the overview of the month, but I'd like to see which weeks turn out better, which weeks have more promising negotiations, or which weeks are better for finances. So if you're interested in a further in-depth financial reading, you can head over to my TikTok and I'll have those videos unlockable for you there. Thank you very much for joining me on this. Best of luck in this month of February. It is Mercury retrograde season, by the way, at the middle to end of February. So we all got to kind of ride it through. You're not the only ones who feel like you're in a bit of a predicament or a pickle, my dears. I will talk to you later. Thank you very much, and ciao for now.